Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another episode of Let's Play Kerbal Space Program. We are still in version 1.05. We still have lots of mods. Check the description box down below. Now, last time, we had a very successful and also not as successful mission in that we did a flyby of Eve that gave us a ridiculous amount of science. Huge amounts of science. In fact, we have so much science that we've actually unlocked absolutely everything we can. We can't start unlocking the next tier right now because we need 1.7 million bucks to be able to upgrade the science center so that we can get to the next tier. So really what we're going to have to do is continue to complete some missions. Now, the mission we tried to complete last time, the grand tour of the inner planets and the moons, I mean, I kind of knew building it that there wouldn't be enough Delta V, especially since we were doing it so fast on stream there. And indeed, we didn't. We did get credit for doing the Destination Eve, but we haven't gotten Gilly, which is the moon of Eve, or Moho. It's kind of inconvenient that we got to go back to the Eve system to be able to do the flyby of Gilly, which sort of sucks, but we can combine it with other things. We do have nuclear engines right now, which means we have a lot more Delta V potential, a lot more efficiency potential. That being said, I don't think I want to go and redo something very similar to the last time. So what I'm actually going to do is work on this one here. Build a new orbital station around Kerbin. This should be a relatively easy contract to complete, but it will set up some things that'll be interesting later on. For now, yes, our quest is simple. Put your station in orbit around Kerbin, build a station that has an antenna, a docking port, and can generate power. Have a facility supporting at least 7 Kerbals. Now, what's interesting about this, you don't actually need to have 7 Kerbals there. It just needs to have 7 Kerbals. It has to have space for 7 Kerbals. It has to have a viewing cupola and 5,000 units of electrical charge. There's also a mission to build a surface outpost on Minmus, which sounds pretty good. And in fact, what's kind of interesting is we could double up on both of these because while it does have to be a new station, we can have a station with a certain capacity that goes into orbit around Kerbin for a little while, completes this quest, and then lands itself on Minmus. The only downside to that is, of course, we will have to create a much more involved sort of mission for the Minmus. So we could double up on it. I'm not going to, and the reason is there's some fun we can have if we have an orbital station around Kerbin, and that is if I can show you a part. Come on. You can do it. Hello, game. Game? There we go. Okay. This may be what we go around. I was just sort of fiddling around here, and that's definitely a possibility. But what I want to show you is under colonization, there is right here. No. Right here, the UKS Training Academy. So what's really interesting about this thing is first of all, it's ridiculously heavy. It is a big thing to get into space. Not only that, but it's quite large. It's the, what is it, like 3.5 meter part? Like if we compare to like our original command pod, right? That's that one. And then we've got the 2.5 meter one, which is this. Well, this is clearly a lot bigger than all of those things. So it is a very, very large part. But what's cool about it is you can run training classes there. And basically, you have one Kerbal with experience that acts as the instructor, and then you can cram it full of other Kerbals, up to 12 in this thing, which is absolutely incredible. And then the other Kerbals will level up automatically to an appropriate level equal to the minimum sort of the instructor, and also where you are. For example, if we were on Kerbin, if we literally just parked this on the launch pad and we made sure we had a Kerbal with at least 1 level of experience in here, then everyone else would level up to 1 star of experience, which is pretty good. But if it's in orbit, everyone goes up to 2 stars, and 2 stars is pretty good. If we can get a level 3 Kerbal and land this on another planet or moon, then they can actually level all the way up to 3 stars. And the Training Academy also acts as a research lab, which is really good. So, one of the powerful things you can do with this thing is load it up with scientists, and 1 level 3 scientist dump it on, say, Minmus, and now all of a sudden, and then you run a training class. Now all of your Kerbals in here are level 3 scientists, and level 3 scientists can process a lot of tech really, really quick. So what I'm wondering is if we just dump this thing, we just drop this in Kerbin orbit, and then maybe we set up something like a spaceplane system where we can go and do that. Now the downside is this thing is insanely expensive. It's 35,000 Kerbal bucks. We're gonna get a reward of oh, is that listed in here? I have to open up the other thing, but I think it's around 130 or 140,000 Kerbal bucks as a reward from completing this. So we're not really going to advance towards unlocking more tech, but we're going to be in a great position. The alternative is to run this thing that I just built as a little sampler. This total cost of this mission here would be 6,700. And what it does is it sets us up for a more long-term base. Sending up a OKS habitation ring, which has a capacity of 10 people. And then it's got the viewing cupola, which is needed to complete the quest. This actually is not set up to do anything as is. In fact, we probably want to set it up empty with a probe core, because yeah, it's really not configured to get any work done whatsoever. But it can be the basis of a proper space station later on. So it's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen the other. I don't think we've got a lot of the really big parts. If we go by, say, size, we do have some Mark III stuff. I guess like what I can do is do by cross section, right? The size 3, so 3.75 meters. This would be all the parts that have this. You can see we don't have any engines or anything like that that fits here. Now, you don't necessarily need that to send a 3.5 or 3.75 meter part in space, but it might be awkward otherwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send this up. It's relatively light. You can see, like, we've got 4,200 delta V here with this configuration. It doesn't take a whole lot. What annoys me, there's a weird glitch with this here. These are mostly UKS modules, which is a great mod. But, oh, there it is, it's back. When I was editing it, it lost like this editing node, which was really weird. So, there it is. There you go. It has to glow green. And we got them facing the right way around. One side of these are the Kerbal, what do they call them? Kerbitrail docking ports. One side actually says point towards ship, and the other one says crew hatch, and make sure the one that says point towards ship is pointing in there. So it's got that. It's got another hatch down here as well. So it's got lots of attachment points. One of the things we need is 5,000 units of electrical charge. So I actually have 5 1K batteries here. There's a little bit of electric charge in the cupola, but not much. It needs to be able to generate power, which you can with a few solar panels over here. We're going to want like more massive solar panels, maybe even a fusion reactor later on, but this is going to be good for now. It's got an antenna right over there. The habitation ring has a capacity for 10 Kerbals, so that's all good. So we got the viewing cupola, the 7 Kerbals done, 5,000 electric charge, has the antenna and can generate power, and hopefully this successfully counts as a docking port, but I'm sure it does because it has a docking node part on it. So that's good. Now, the only thing is, if we're going to send this in space, again, I don't think we need to send a Kerbal up here. We don't actually have a supply thing, so we definitely don't want to stick a Kerbal in this area. So what I'm going to do is go to Command and Control, pods, and we're going to grab a brain for our ship. Probably the Octo, the more advanced thing that we've got. Why not? So we're just going to stick it right on top of there. There we go. Looks all right. And so this thing will be responsible for bringing the ship into orbit. So we're not going to have anyone on board of here. It's just going to sit in orbit, and that's going to be perfectly fine for completing our quest. So it is going to use up 70,000. So, I mean, we did get an advance as well. The advance mostly covered it. I can't remember what the advance was. We can look at it in a second on the next screen. But, you know, so we're not making pure amounts of money, but it's going to be a good setup for later, and we will make a little bit of cash, so that's going to be okay. So let's go ahead and launch this thing. Now, I might have been able to manufacture something that was even cheaper than this. I mean, certainly, I could have just stuck one single solar panel on here instead of a big number of them. Actually, I really should have. This thing doesn't necessarily need the extensible ones. No, it's okay. We'll appreciate it later on, when maybe we build a space casino or something. Plus, we now have the procedural quest generation, so that's in Kerbal 1.05, so they'll probably give us more missions to expand this base later on, which sounds like fun. So if I go and open this, and we take a look at the actual quest again, orbital station here. So we got an advance of 47,000. So we actually mostly paid for it from the advance, and then 122. So all in all, we're going to net about 100K out of this, and that's not nothing. All right. Well, let's go ahead and just open up the Smart ASS. Turn on regular ASS to launch, because why not? Full throttle. Tons of Delta V that's going to be here. Actually, we're going to want to throttle this back. Tons of thrust to weight. We have 4,200 delta V, which isn't infinite, but our thrust to weight is sick. If I go back to like 50% throttle, we're still accelerating at a very, very brisk pace. We're also not the most aerodynamic on the top here. I could have done some sort of fairing, and maybe I should have, because I just remembered that I'm using FAR, and FAR, the atmosphere is a lot less unforgiving, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so I've got my battery rack there, I've got some simple solar panels down there, a couple of radiators just in case, and then I've got some solar panels we can extend at the top, so lots of power generation there. So let's go ahead and tip over about 10 degrees. We have a lot of gimbling, so fighting the aerodynamic pressure that might want us to flip over is going to be doable. There we go, that's looking all right. I need to bring up my orbital info right over here. Let's put that back where it used to be. Oh, I got a stage. There we are. And you can go ahead and go to surface prograde and basically do your gravity turn the way we'd want. There we are. Apoapsis is climbing slowly. So one of the big questions, actually, that would have affected my Delta V2 is how high do I want to set this station? I tend to put it around 200K, my stations. Seems like a good number. It's relatively easy to have future launches launch into 100K orbit and then be able to home and transfer up for the boost. You can see, like, these the radiators really do suck a lot of the other heat out of the system, and then you get the heat bars right away, but they're actually relatively heat resistant, so it's not really a panic, just showing that they are getting warm, and that's okay. So we are continuing to gravity turn, but maybe a little slower than we would like. So I'm going to go ahead and encourage it to come down a little bit more. Also, it'd be really nice if we got right on the equatorial track and not slightly off like we're doing now. Let's go ahead and ditch that. Let's throttle up here. Thrust to weight is still actually really, really incredible. So now we're at 15K. We're definitely a little slow in our gravity turn, but I think ultimately we're okay. I'm just gonna... I think things are... Oh, you know what I forgot? Parachutes. That would have saved us some money. I mean, those parts are relatively cheap. This is going to be the more expensive one. We can't recover that one because it's just going to be floating around in space. So I'm mostly just trying to bring us a little more equatorial over here by tapping left. A slightly steeper ascent isn't the end of the world because we are actually going a little higher. If we're going to 200K. Hopefully we've got enough Delta V to do that. My Delta V calculations would be slightly off because of the thicker atmosphere here. Although we haven't gotten like huge air effects, it certainly is going to be slowing us down a bit because that is not a very smooth front. Especially using FAR, which is more accurate atmospherics. I like Scatterer, it's good. It's the only visual mod I have. I don't have EVE loaded in. EVE is really beautiful, but it tends to slow things down a lot. I don't find Scatterer slows us down too much, and I really like the atmospheric glow, so, or the haze. Alright, so, our apoapsis is actually climbing above a minute now, which is not really what I want. So I'm going to try to throttle back to the point where the apoapsis is a little bit more static. We're high enough that the atmosphere is thin enough. I think I'm pretty comfortable about leaving it. Apo is still climbing. We just entered orbital mode on the nav ball. So I'm actually going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is encourage us to push down to the horizon, which will also be a way to counter ignoring that. Yeah, the air's thin enough that I don't think we're going to run into any weird atmospheric effects. Let me go back to full throttle and just help to push this down. Fighting my own SAS here, but that's okay. Yeah, time to apoapsis will definitely climb. Alright, we throttle back. I could also set MechJeb to aim for the horizon. There's a few different ways, actually. One of the easiest ways might just be to say, hey, go for a pro horizontal. There we go. That'll be that way. But I'll still need to throttle back here. There we go. Time to apoapsis is dropping. Just try to flatten things out a wee bit. I mean, we still have to push up our apo. But if we're just burning sideways like this, that should work as long as this doesn't start to drop precariously. And we're actually still growing a little bit, even being at, like, what is this, 20% thrust? I mean, our thrust to weight ratio is gargantuan. I'm a little bit worried about running out of Delta V at this point. We might have to settle for a lower orbit. I think the air pressure here is definitely something I hadn't considered. All right, time to Apo is still climbing, but that's not the end of the world because the apoapsis itself is still going up as well. And I don't want to go any lower than this just because this gimbling is most of our sort of directional control. And this will help. Yeah. Well, we're going to have to save enough for circularizing, although we are flattening this out very, very, very nicely as is. If we come and look over here, we're not going to need any work, much work at all to circularize. So basically what we'll do is we'll just try to push this up to as high of an orbit as we can, and that'll be good. Already our apoapsis is in space, so that's all right. Time to apoapsis is growing quickly. So what we'll do, even at the slow burn, which is just ridiculous, we'll push this up to around 200. And then we'll just kill it and coast up there and circularize again. Actually, it wouldn't surprise me if our apo and peri flipped over here. In fact, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. We're actually going to circularize well before apo is high enough, and that's all right. 500 delta V. You can see, look at this. Working at circularization. We're pushing up the apoapsis pretty aggressively here, though. We're not even in space yet. Now, I finally have an updated version of this. Let's hope that the solar panel deployment now works. It'd be really nice. Okay, camera just moved because our peri is, I think above 30 you get your first camera move. Apoapsis is about to hit 200, which is where I'm going to be happy. I'll stop it just before then because good chance when I do our circularization burn, I'll raise the apoapsis a bit. So we have 330 meters per second. We need very little to raise our peri to be in space. There we go, auto deployment. It makes me so happy because I always forget to deploy the solar panels. And it seems like the sort of thing you should be able to program in. But yeah, it will be easy to make sure that we are orbital at least. And I suspect we'll be able to circularize perfectly fine as well. And in fact, if I want to be the super lazy way, I can use the maneuver planner from MechJeb. Just get in career mode, you have to unlock all this stuff. And there's a circularization little helper at the next apoapsis. Create the node there. It'll take us 114 meters per second to do that. Let me go and actually derate the engine here. Now, MechJeb will have an easier time to do it. Let me go and just recreate that just in case it changes some of our timing. Although MechJeb is aware of our actual thrust, this will give it a little bit of extra precision in planning the maneuver. Not that MechJeb has that hard a time, but it seems like a pretty good idea. And we're going to go ahead and make a quick save because we're about to do a time warp. Excellent. And execute next node. So what it's going to do is it's going to turn to aim us in the right direction from the node. It'll time warp to 12 minutes ahead, and then it'll execute the burn when it's time. Not that this would be hard to do manually, of course. And in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if I wouldn't have wanted to hit my apoapsis exactly for this one. But, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not like when I'm taking off from the ground, I'm punching in 200K. Instead, what I'm going to be doing when I'm taking off from the ground with future modules, I'm going to be going for a 100K ascent. And then once I'm safely in orbit, I'm going to check to see where I can plan my encounter. You can, if you know a few things about exactly how long it takes you to get into orbit or from the ground, you can plan it so that the space station is at exactly the right place overhead so that when you launch and you arrive at 200K, you will be perfectly lined up with the space station. But yeah, no. That's too much for me. Plus, every design you have will have a different time to orbit, so that's no good. But now, one of the interesting things is once we have this, one of the ideas we could have is setting up a space plane to go and deliver more parts over there. I think that might be a little bit beyond us right now, just because the size of these components I think will be too big for a space plane. But once we have our training lab up here, then it becomes very viable to make a passenger-only space plane that can bring, well, I guess 12 Kerbals, sure, why not, to the lab, dock, transfer all the Kerbals into the training center, and have one of them be the instructor, and then everyone learns, right? Oh, flyby V. And then everyone learns, and then you detach a space plane, and you bring him back home, and there you go, you've got a bunch of level 12 Kerbals. That'll be a lot of fun, but we'll have to go and increase this a little bit more. So our orbit will be 197.5K. I think this is a scatterer glitch. Like, shows you the sunburst effect through the planet. It's kind of a little bit funny. I'm pretty sure that's scatterer. It's trying to, like, do cool atmospheric effects of the sun, and it's forgetting that there's a planet in the way. It'll probably be updated soon. And there we go. Nice and circular and about 200k. Good enough for government work. That's alright. I could ditch this, but it still has a little bit of delta V. We want to do some adjustments later on. Anyway, there's no worries. We just completed our contract. Excellent. We may as well leave it there for now. It might get in the way of some other modules later, but of course we can also plug modules in on the sides here, so I'm not too concerned. Okay. Quick save before we switch, and we'll just drop down to the Space Center at this point. Oh, and we'll make sure that it looks right on our map. Make sure it's flagged as a space station. Actually, while I was up there, I probably could have accepted a contract. Who knows? There might have been one to send science or something. Let's go over here. So the OKS. Yeah, it's got like a lander picture, which isn't what we want. So we go to info. The name, OKS Kerbin, so that's the orbital Kerbal station, I guess. And we just want to have the station graphic, because that looks cool! Okay! So that's good. What other missions might we pick up here? We will be going back to do a flyby of Moho soon. Although, you know, just doing the flyby of Moho just gives us science, and science is not what we need right now. I mean, we will want more science ultimately, but what we need more than anything is to complete quests to make money. And I might just do more of these satellite quests over here. You can build a satellite for relatively cheap because it's a light thing to put into orbit, and just accepting us gives it 30 grand and then another 86, 87. So about 110 grand in total from this contract. I'm not going to do those missions because they're a little bit dull to look at. That's a lot of money. And if we're going back to the Eve system for Gilly, we can probably do these. We'll have to probably force it to happen manually because we probably won't get a science pop-up for it. Multispectral analysis data, interesting. I mean, we may as well take it. We'll have 9 years to do it, which sounds like a lot, but actually, you got to remember, it's going to take us at least a year to get from Kerbin to Eve, and that's assuming that we're in the right transfer window at first. We might have to wait another year for that to happen too. The surface outpost on Minmus is good. I don't think we have the ore collector tools yet for this. I don't know. The carbonite must count for this. I'm assuming they can't give you the quest unless you can do it. We do have carbonite collectors, so it's an idea. We can take a look. And just planting a flag on Minmus, like, there's some good rewards there. Science from around the moon. We don't have a satellite in orbit around the moon, do we? Because that would be an easy way to complete it. Moonsat 1, we do, in fact. Hang on. Right, this, I think I put it around orbit of the moon to complete a quest, and then I also did, like, maybe a biome scan and all those things. Actually, it might actually have some legit science data waiting for us, too. I mean, we can always send a 0-value science, and that's going to complete the quest. But yeah, we have, this is our biome scanner, which actually has data to transmit, which is nice. Now complete the quest. And what about the altimetry? It's got a little bit of science too. I think we've already done a partial send. But again, you can send a 0-value science, and that would be enough. What is this? A goo container? Oh, I needed the goo container for the quest. Not enough electric charge. That's a little bit annoying. Hang on. I think, though, yeah, we'd found out if I'm time warping, because the rate that the science is sent doesn't increase, but the time warp does consider the solar panels, so it's just as a convenience thing. We can do that. And let's kill the speed over here. Review data. Send, and then same thing. We'll just time warp. It doesn't accelerate the rate of transmission, does accelerate the rate of that. I mean, it makes sense. You should be able to just transmit slower. It's like, okay. Or in little packets, which you can do. You can change one of the settings on the antenna to do partial sends. But I haven't tested with that, so I don't know. But in any case, that completes the quest. Boom. And we may as well send the rest of the data. And again, we can just send a 0 data later on, and that will complete the quests. Or 0 science worth of data. And done. Okay. Quick save before we change use. Actually, before I do that, biome scan of Minmus. So very little advance, which is surprising for that. But it actually would be good. We do want a biome scan of Minmus at some point. Just because... Now, I'm assuming Minmus doesn't actually have a satellite. No. Just because that will tell us where we may want to land. And if we're planning on dropping a base on Minmus, that wouldn't be a bad project put in there. So again, these are just... You guys have seen sort of satellite launches in the past. I don't think they're particularly exciting. They are... The only challenge is mostly matching the orbits. And you guys saw how difficult that was when we launched our moon satellite, for example, because I misread our entry. It's especially tricky with polar ones, because depending on what side of the orbit you're on when you launch, you either want to go up or down. You have to be careful to double check that. Okay, so what I'll probably do between episodes is go ahead and launch a couple of satellites. And when we come back, we'll have a little bit more money, probably still not enough to update this. And we probably will want to plan that actual Moho trip. And potentially the Eve thing, too. We actually have a quest to enter orbit around Eve as well. So I think what might happen, actually... Right? Orbital survey of Eve and orbit Eve. So I think what we might do is just go back to Eve by itself. Maybe not Moho. It might be possible to do it all together. I don't know. The inner moons, does that ever expire? No, it doesn't. Okay. Or does it actually show me the expiring? Yes, it does. Okay, so the only thing I've got with the mission deadline is the orbital survey of Eve, which is worth a lot, because, oh yeah, not only is there another 173,000 for completing it, you get all this money for each one of these little micro steps that you do. Each one of these will give you further rewards, plus bonus science. So it's actually a pretty groovy quest. So I think that's it. I think we have to go into orbit there. Now, what's interesting here is we don't actually need to... See, these here actually require that it be transmitted to some science value. If no science value, the results must be returned home. And I think the transmit from space is not the same. Can we get there just with Minmus? Well, maybe. Although this is going to cost us a fair penny over here. I think what we're going to do next is we're going to just go to Eve, orbit Eve, do the science there, do a flyby of Gilly, science as much as we can around that. Maybe we can go to Moho in the same trip. I'll see. I'll probably have to design things in between episodes to try to squeeze out as much Delta V using a bunch of nuclear engines as possible. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching, folks. Bye-bye.